Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, especially to our PGCPS family, and welcome to Teacher Talk. Today, we're going to be discussing community schools and parent engagement. I hope you guys came with your questions, and we have a great panel here that will answer all your questions tonight. So Teacher Talk was initiated into the county by myself, Kishia Thorpe, and Rosette Barner-Wiley under the leadership of Mallory Manash in partnership with Prince George's County Public School. And this is sponsored by the National Life Group and LifeChanger of the Year program. Teacher Talk covers a variety of relevant topics from K to 12, today's K to 12 school employees, including remote learning, social emotional learning, and other social justice topics. And during today's session and all of our sessions, we usually have PGCPS teachers and school employees come together, share thought-provoking ideas and insights where we can all gain experience from different level employees and collaborate and just share best practices. So thank you for being here today, and hopefully you have your questions ready, and because we're ready to answer them. So I'm gonna go around the room, and each of our panelists today are going to go ahead and introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Dr. Ryan Daniel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Ryan Daniel, and I am the proud principal of Fort Foote Elementary School. This is my 16th year in Prince George's County Public Schools. I'm a product of Prince George's County Public Schools and just really excited to be here tonight with you all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ryan. We'll go ahead with Ms. Boozer-Strother. Pamela?
Thank you so much, Ms. Thorpe. Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Boozer-Strother. I'm the District 3 Board of Education member for the PGCPS Board of Education. And but probably more importantly, I came to this as a parent at Mount Rainier Elementary. My son is now in the 6th grade. And since I've joined the board, I'm also serving on the Community Schools Steering Committee. So I look forward to joining with all these outstanding community schools educators and PGCPS today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Janice, do you want to go ahead and also introduce yourself?
My name is Janice Marquez, and I am actually a Montessori teacher, but I've been working with PGCPS for 11 years. And I've been a Montessori teacher for almost 35 years. And right now, currently, I am with Mary Harris Mother Jones, which is my first year in a community school.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. We're looking forward to you sharing your insight on the Montessori experience. Ellen, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Ellen Slobodnik. I am the academic dean at College Park Academy, which is one of the public charter schools at PGCPS. And this is my 10th year with PGCPS.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for your willingness to participate and to share your knowledge today. So we're going to just jump into this conversation about what are community schools? What are community schools? Anyone want to jump in and just share some insight on what community schools are?
Community schools are actually just a regular school, but except that they go beyond what the regular non-community schools go. Like they provide other services for the kids, they provide after school activities and even other resources. So I guess it just depends on the population of where the community school is. For example, my school right now, there are a lot of it's in a immigrant area. So now most of the resources are geared towards responding to all the necessities of that specific population. Like maybe like we get free vegetables. There's a free vegetables program like weekly, etc. I guess even clothing, and other resources. And there's more, of course.
Thank you so much. Anyone else want to add to that?
I can add. So just as a principal, I'm in my previous school at Chillum Elementary School, where I served for the last 4 years. We were a community school. At Fort Foote, we're not identified as a community school. However, I think we do have some of the benefits that a community school has. But, you know, when I think of a community school, I think of a school that provides wraparound services for the entire school community. So they're not just a resource for the students and the teachers, but the extension of the students and the teacher. So the parents, the siblings, the community, you know, there is a lot of resources that get poured into a community school, wraparound services, mental health, you know, financial opportunities for parents. My community school coordinator at Chillum, you know, would share job opportunities and food banks and different resources. So when I think of a community school, I think of it as a wraparound, a hub for everyone that's impacted or that is impacting that student. So everyone that's an extension of that student, I believe, is what embodies a community school.
Thank you so much. And I can concur with a lot of the things that you say, especially I think one of the key things that we always identify with community school is wraparound services. So thank you so much for sharing that. So when we think about the concept of community service, community school, we think about it not being a conventional public school. So what makes the community school so different from a conventional public school?
I would say it's definitely the partnership between the community and the school. The resources are pulled together to provide that wraparound services that some of the previous panelists were talking about, and really making sure that the whole child and the whole community is involved in making sure that everyone is successful.
Thank you so much. Jenna, so I know that you teach at a Montessori school, and you say that this is the first year in community of your school being a community school. So why do you think the community schools are better model than the regular public schools?
First of all, it's geared towards more of the whole child. It's more holistic. So rather than the conventional, which is pretty much more like geared towards the academics. But in a community school, you have just like what our other panelists have said, that, you know, they provide jobs, etc. But when you address the wholeness of the child, the needs are actually, the other needs are met. And that's very similar to Montessori. That's why I said, you know, there is the model for Montessori community schools should be more adapted, because like in a Montessori school, you already have they have gardens, there's gardens, there's outdoor environment, and it's already there. And with the partnership in the community, you can actually go to small businesses and seek out sponsorships, and that could pretty much engage not only the students but also the parents. And it's just an example. There's actually a lot more.
Well, thank you. Anyone else want to just jump in? I see Ms. Bugler-Strother, you want to go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, well, I first of all, everything I've heard so far is just great representation of where PGCPS has been heading, and certainly proud to have both Mary Harris, Mother Jones, and Chillum Elementary under Dr. Daniel in District 3, and all the great work that you did. We miss you. So what I would say is also a commitment on behalf of the school system. It's also a cultural shift. So in the traditional schools, you have the PTAs or PTOs, PTSAs, they would be doing the fundraising, sometimes driven by a small group of parents who had the maybe skills, time, and energy, and possibly a community that is more economically resourced. But what we're talking about in PGCPS, because of the identification of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, is high concentration of poverty schools. And that is where the needs are so great. And the commitment, everything we've heard prior is around that commitment of the whole child and the necessity for academic achievement. And, the one thing, what I think is the big shift commitment is that shared leadership model in each of our school buildings with parents and administration and our community schools coordinators and others, that will be the big change for PGCPS over time. Thanks.
Thank you. And you did talk about community school coordinators, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. But I want to go ahead and introduce to you Miss Amity Pope. And Miss Amity Pope is actually, I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself. She had a little trouble getting in, but now she's here. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and also what role she plays with community schools, especially the establishment of community schools in PGCPS.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amity Pope. I'm currently a mentor teacher in the Office of Professional Learning and Leadership. About 6 years ago, I convened a group of individuals that I just named the Community Schools Coalition after having attended a summit of sorts with NEA and learning more about community schools. And members of that coalition were elected school board members that are no longer with us: Loopy Grady, Mary Roach, and we had members from our family and community engagement, Dr. Sheila Jackson, and union members, Zena Whitworth, and an associate superintendent currently now, but was my former principal, Dr. David Curry, and our national board certification liaison for the school district. And I pulled all these people together because I kept talking about there's a way that we can bridge the gap. There's a way. And I would talk to a fly on a wall about it. But in any case, I finagled funds through the union, and the 10 of us or so, along with Robert McNair, who's now our restorative practices coordinator. We flew to Colorado. We visited certain schools. We also, another group I took to Texas. We looked at the different community schools there that were making dramatic gains, not just academics, but it's a whole child concept. Came back, worked tirelessly with Loopy Grady and Mary Roach and drafted the community schools policy. And as a result of that policy, we were funded $2.1 billion to Prince George's County Public Schools. And that is how community schools came to Prince George's County.
All right, well, thank you so much. So why was it started, and what results have they achieved? What results did they hope to achieve in integrating community schools?
So like I shared, like the premise for starting was just, people looked at gaps primarily around academics. How do we move our students that need supports to achieving success? And as an educator, I would say that most of us, if not all of us on this panel as educators, agree that academics is one pocket of the whole child, right? And so if you imagine a piece of Swiss cheese that you want to turn into provolone cheese, and maybe because I'm a foodie, that's how I kind of think of it. The child is the cheese, right? But the child and the family and the parent, they're the cheese. And academics is like one whole of that Swiss cheese. But it doesn't actually happen silo like that, right? We always say and hear, if a child can't eat, if a child is hungry, they can't learn. But where is the bridge to gap that hunger rather than knowing it as a thing? So that was the reason for it. And maybe some people here can share some of the results that have been produced from it.
Before we go into them sharing some of those results, I just wanted to, that's fine, that's totally fine. But I just wanted to ask you one more question before we move on to some of the other questions for our panelists. You know, as an education system, we try not to do anything without having evidence-based results that we can actually look at and say, well, it's worked in different spaces. It may work for us and our student population. So what are those evidence-based practices or evidence of success that was used to put this program together or this model together?
So the evidence base, right? This is where I share with people to stretch their minds, but beyond thinking of one data point. Like, we are encouraged as educators to go beyond one data point, because like reading recovery, we've all heard of it, right? We've all probably used it at some time, but for some strange reason, it's really not strange, it is just reality. Reading recovery goes off really well in one school, and that same program literally tanks in another, right? Same program, same processes, same strategies. So the evidence behind this community schools concept as a strategy is really simple, but as humans, sometimes it's easy to get very complicated. There are 4 simple steps that if they're followed through with fidelity, then the results of that actual community will show, there'll be evidence. So because no one community is the same, community schools will not and should not have all of the same services. It's not differentiated, right? So the success comes from the needs asset assessment, and that's supposed to be done with 95% of the school's population, not only in-house, but externally, like in a 5-mile radius. From that needs asset assessment, there's a root analysis that is done, and any type of science improvement, fishbone diagram, plan, do, act, any one of those science improvement programs can help get to what those root causes are. And that community school coordinator is working with not only the leadership team, but there should be a community school steering committee within each community school that is primarily filled with students, parents, external partners, and external partners are actually really to be those individuals in that 5 to 10 mile radius, and then maybe some local government departments, like the Department of Social Services, and things like that. Think individuals that are primarily, as Dr. Ryan stated, I was able to see when I was not a panelist, the community as a hub. And so it all starts with that needs asset assessment. And that is the proven, that brings about those proven success rates. Like in the schools that we visited in Colorado and Texas, truancy and absenteeism went from, hundreds of percent or 100% or very high to very low. And at the same time, enrollment increased in schools. And it was because that school, with the changes that were made to fill in that Swiss cheese to make it provolone, made it so that it was an environment that students wanted to be in and parents wanted their children there. That's just a quick example. I can go on and on, but.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you did talk about needs assessment and those different surveys. And I did put a link in the chat that actually is backed by research as some of the top surveys that most schools actually do to figure out what the needs of their school community is. So I want to just continue and asking Dr. Ryan to share, what does community school mean for you, for your school? What does that mean for your school as a school administrator, and what role do you play?
So yes, as I shared earlier, when I think of community schools, it's that wraparound service, that hub that we provide extension to the students. So I have had the opportunity to be a principal at 2 different schools. So for 4 years, I was the principal of Chillum Elementary School, which is a Title I school, and an identified community school. And then now I am the principal of Fort Foote Elementary School, that is not a Title I school, not an identified community school. But because of my experience at Chillum and the work we did with the community school programs for 2 of the 4 years that I had been there, I've taken some of those strategies, those resources, and turnkey them and to make it fit for my new school community. So, some of the success that we saw in Chillum with the support of the community school program was particularly because it was during COVID, right? And so that's when we really saw the strength of what a community school program can do for a school community. We were able to provide services to parents who were, needed immigration information, that needed medical information, that were out of work, that needed food. Our community school coordinator and our educator liaison, they really work to sharing information with parents and an ongoing rate. We did a lot of work with the mental health of not only the students, but the families, our staff, everyone, because I'm really big as a leader of everyone that's affected by the work must affect the work. And that includes, all of the people. So now in my current school at Fort Foote Elementary School, we are not, I don't have a community school coordinator. I don't have community school funds, but I know the impact the community school has on a school. And for me, it's been really important too, just like what Amity talked about, bridging that gap between the school and the community, finding the resources, getting the community to understand what was happening in the school. For example, where Fort Foote is, we are situated right beside the National Harbor, right? However, our population of students is very low. And I got to dig and I'm like, I don't understand, why are our family, we serve this population across the street, but they're not coming here. Why not? Do they not know what is within the school building, what resources we have? So for me this year, it's been elevating what's happening in our school to get the community involved more, to any services, anyone has a resource that we can provide to our families. I'm sharing that information to our families right away on an ongoing basis. I'm bringing those people in to some of the different community events that we have. So I just think that a community school, whether you have the funds or not, whether you have the title or not, is really just about utilizing all of the people that are impacted by that school.
All right, thank you so much. And I know that Ellen, you teach in a public charter school, correct? So why don't you go ahead and give us your perspective from that end, and also tell us what a needs assessment is and how important that is to the school.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually used to teach at a middle school in PGCPS that is now a community school. We were a Title I turnaround, and now they're a community school, Golsom Middle School for 5 years. And now I'm a dean at a charter school that is in the county. And so I agree with everything that Dr. Ryan was saying. It really is about involving the community and providing as many resources as you can. I know a lot of parent events that we used to have, or that we still have, you want to invite as many community sponsors as you can. So it's not just an event for parents to come and meet with teachers. They're also meeting with businesses around, tutoring services, medical services, if you can get it. So as many people as you can get into one event, the better. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for your parents, and that's how you get a couple more coming. But a needs assessment is a kind of a way of asking a group or community members what they see as the most important needs of that group or community. And then the results of that survey will then kind of guide your action and kind of determine what that community needs. It can be informal, just asking your parents or asking your community as they come in, or you can create a formal survey and send it out. And it's beneficial because it would create more group and community support. If they fill it out and then feel involved with the action, they're more likely to take part in the action of changing the community and the school itself.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your response. And as you talked about those resources that are provided, funds has to come from somewhere, right? So I'm going to let Ms. Boothar-Strother jump in and just tell us, where do community schools funding come from?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because you know, as Amity was saying, when she was working with the board members and experts, there was a very different proposal than there is what's happening today. So some of you may remember the Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative, and of course, I would say we had plenty of school leaders who understood community schools and were implementing a vision even before we declared a policy. But the 2017, 2018, the board was looking at $1 million for a pilot program, maybe have like 4 community schools. But then at the same time, the legislature was working on the Kerwin Commission was founded. Community schools was a big, a core piece, and then there needed to be the assembly to fund what ultimately is the blueprint for Maryland's future. And so just this past year, to give you an idea of how much funding there is now for the 74 schools, it was 13.4 million. And that's just the portion funding the community schools coordinator, the mental health coordinator, and the grant program. But what we also have are these partnerships that, to me, it's all about the leveraging of that 13 million is just leveraged into millions. And if we could quantify the in-kind and what each of the schools is, you know, what those relationships are doing, that is like a massive increase in, you know, what we're talking about, the funding. And then if you look at Department of Social Services, you know, like the 12 advocates at the middle schools, I think it's 12 of 24 middle schools now have the advocates funded from Department of Social Services, totally connected in to this model. That's the kind of leverage. And the other thing that I think is really great to watch too is that these grant funds are staying in the community. So I could use examples close to home, Mount Rainier Elementary, Thomas Stone Elementary. When their grant funds go to nonprofits like Cafe and Joe's Movement Emporium that they work with on arts programs, those funds stay in the community. These are nonprofit, fund nonprofit employees who work with our children in our schools. And so it's just a continual cycle of leveraging community and those funds from, you know, essentially from the state.
And if I can add, one of the most underutilized funding or financing, which I like to say, is if you diversify your funds as an adult, like diversification of funds for community schools. There's some Title I provides a major opportunity for community schools. However, it's always kind of underutilized. And for example, like USDE or USDA, they have programs where they will underwrite cost of nutritious meals and snacks. Title III funding can go to support immigrant children and their families. So it's really delving in, and it's something that can be done with partners, external partners as well, to all of the available funding mechanisms to add to in-kind donations to help supplement, not supplant, the federal and county funds that come in.
So I have a question, and I'm sure some of our participants on the other end are probably curious as well. I know that this year, coming out of, well, we're obviously not really out of COVID, but when we're thinking about the funding, we've had a lot of schools have a great reduction. For example, my school had a 50% reduction of our community school funding. And we're trying to figure out, why did we have such a drastic cut in funding, especially when we serve a special population of students who are the most vulnerable in the county and who tend to be the most marginalized population of students, or Hispanic students who are immigrants, and most of them are undocumented, and their parents, especially during COVID, have been the most impacted. So we're just trying to figure out, and again, like I said, I'm sure these are some of the questions that others may probably want to ask, because even though we're able to garner community partnership and have some help with the community, but the cutting of those funds really set us back in terms of progress that we need to make with our special community of students.
So I can start and others can chime in.
I would like you to chime in, and definitely our board member and our principal as well. I would definitely like your perspectives.
I would say it's, it's a matter of how the funding is utilized and how it's distributed. And through the community schools steering committee, that, like Dr. Daniel right now, it sounds like she is making this happen. And I miss working with her. We were colleagues for a very short period of time. She's a stellar educator and stellar principal. And right now she is acting as a community school coordinator and probably finding a leader there to do that. And then she'll probably form a steering committee where there are more minds at the table. And with that, utilize looking at the funding distribution, because a lot of people, just like with the pandemic, kind of like, maybe panic and hold their funds, and they're saving them for some things that on the surface may make the difference, but at the end of the day may not meet what's needed underneath those, those root causes to really get a big bang for the buck, in a sense, with really supporting students and their families in the communities outside of the schools.
All right, Ms. Witherspoon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I could, if I'm understanding correctly, on the blueprint funds, each of the eligible schools, which is now 70% concentration of poverty or higher over these first 3 years of the blueprint, which I believe brings us to 74 schools. Each eligible school receives $248,833. And what maybe, correct me if you're headed somewhere else, but in the first year or two, the grant, the funds to spend on, say, community organizations to provide services was about 100,000. And then the next year's, the mental health coordinators were added into that same pot of funds. So if you probably find that your grants, that sort of unrestricted grants to choose as a school dropped considerably, but the total amount allocated per school is $248,833. But of course, we could always look into the overall school budget to see if what the other reasons might be.
All right, Dr. Ryan, do you want to chime in for a quick second?
Yes, but I would just be remiss. I see that Dr. Ingrid Williams-Horton is in here as the attendees, as the director of community schools. So definitely we just want to say hello and kind of kudos to all the work that she's done. I am in a very, very interesting year because I don't have the funding source of community schools, but I have the blueprint rather of what a community school is and the capacity of it. And so what has been really important for me is just leveraging some of those relationships that I've cultivated in the past and showing that the need is still here, despite the Title I status, the demographics. I think community schools, the blueprint or framework of a community schools is something that's great for all schools, because there is definitely a linkage between schools and the community and how it can impact student success. It can just impact the culture and climate. And for me, as my first year at Fort Foote, that's something that is a goal of mine, right? To impact the climate and culture of the school. And I can't do that by myself. You know, a school is the community, a school is the people. And I definitely like that I had the opportunity to kind of be at the beginning of the community schools program and the rollout, and know like the impact that it has and the people that I can always reach out for. Like, hey, listen, I don't have the funding, but like, can you at least give me some resources that I can tap into?
All right, so we had a question in the chat about community schools funding, actually using it for after school enrichment. Is that something that community school funding can be allocated for?
Yeah, I know a lot of schools, the county does a great job of providing those summer extended learning programs or extension of the school years, but then community schools can then do their own. They can call it like summer enrichment. You can also use it for transportation for those students if they have difficulty coming to those events. So absolutely, you can use it for enrichment. You could also look into using it for programs to supply or supplement your enrichment programs that you're going to run after. So like Read 180, if you don't have access to that. There's a lot of programs out there. I can't think of one on the top of my head besides Read 180 for some reason, but yeah.
All right, thank you. Janesse, you want to go ahead and share?
Well, there is a tutorial program, I believe, that we have currently at our school, and also there will be more programs forthcoming, but I think it's in the works right now. Currently, we have mainly that's the program, and hopefully there's going to be we're going to be more into arts integration, but we still don't know how it's going to be done. So, but I know there is an initiative to delve more into arts.
All right, thank you. And as we move forward into, so a lot of you talked about the fact that it is not just the school. It requires the involvement and collaboration and partnership of everyone. And so when we think of community school, we think of families, right? So let's jump into family engagement. Let's definitely get into family engagement. And Janesse, so what are some of the strategies that can be employed to start engaging families in this process?
Well, first of all, I think it should start in the classroom. So you want the parents to be partners in the education of their children. And you first you have to encourage them, because parents who think that their children are doing well at school are actually more inclined to participate in activities, in school activities. Although, of course, that's still limited depending on the livelihood of our parents. So that's one. And also, I think there should be a program also for parents. So one could be, the learning of language, like teaching English, or also teaching them how to help their children from home. And just from my experience, a lot of my students actually tried to seek the help from their parents. And currently I'm teaching 5th grade math. So parents are willing to help their children, but they do not have the tools to help. So I think it should start with the academics or the school, and then from then on, you can extend it to the after school programs if they want to participate in other activities.
All right, thank you. So Dr. Ryan, I see you nodding your head. Could you just jump in really quickly, Dr. Ryan, and just tell us the difference? As an administrator, I know you know that there's a difference between parent engagement and parent involvement. And I'm sure some of our listeners will probably want to know the difference as well. So could you distinguish them for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think that there is a difference between involvement and engagement. And that as a leader has been one of the main missions of mine. As a parent myself, I'm a girl mom. I have 3 daughters. And, I always put myself in the shoes of my parents, right? Like, would I be bored in this assembly, in this meeting? Like, is this really meeting my needs? And it has made me revamp the way I look at how we engage parents into the school. And so, involving them is them showing up, right? Yeah, we want them to show up, but are they just there out of compliance? Are they just there, just to say that they brought their child so they can get the ticket, so they can get the meal, so the student can get the dress down pass? You know what I'm saying? So I moved to having parents be engaged, right? So our literacy nights, our math nights, these are now family nights, where they're not coming to learn about the curriculum. They're going to do the science experiment with the student, right? They're going to sit and do the main idea and the fact and opinion task that the teacher is so excited to use in the classroom. Now they're doing it with the parents, right? So, the hallways are flooded with parents and students fishing for sight words, right? Playing math bingo. And they're learning about what their students are doing in the classroom, but they're engaged with it now, right? It's getting them to be a part of the learning environment. And the great thing about the pandemic is that it forced us to be a lot more creative. Right now, we have parents that can show up for things that they wouldn't been able to show up before because the hindrance of getting to the building. So even just in this new normal that we're in, where we're utilizing virtual platforms now, such as this, getting parents to participate in the morning announcements at Fort Foot right now. Some of the things that I am doing, I have a parent crew. Right. And, we say the word PTA and they get scared, but I say I need a crew of parents to support me. And they're like, oh, I can be a part of your crew, Dr. Daniel. And, we are right now preparing for a fall festival tomorrow, where, it is a bridge between the community and the students and the school and the teachers. And I have parents that are meeting with me every day in Zoom, and we're planning things out. I'm teaching them how to use Google Docs. And, we're utilizing the things that they see their student use all of the time, and they know how to work it now, right? They're popping in and giving us candy donations and asking what it is that we need, because I've shown them the importance of their presence and showing them that they matter. For me, I've had the experience working in a high ELL population, and I've learned that those families, they trust the school so much, right? Because they know that we're giving their students something that they're unable to, right? So they rely on us, they trust us. And so I use those as opportunities to engage parents in what it is that we're doing in the school community. So again, that engagement and involvement, yes, you want the parents to show up, but you want them to be a part of the learning environment and what you all are doing in your buildings.
I wanted to add, thank you, Dr. Ryan. That was great. And I just wanted to add, with technology, I think moving forward, schools should really think about having hybrid events, right? You do have some parents who do love to show up. They love to get that interaction. But then, like Dr. Ryan said, you have some parents who just cannot make it with their schedules. And so we've all learned that Zoom platforms work, virtual platforms, whatever it is that you're using. So think about having hybrid, and that's something that we are doing at our school when we can. based on all the COVID restrictions, but we're trying to have hybrid. We're actually seeing more parents show up because some people did not like the virtual, but some people love. So meeting the needs of all of your parents. And then with the virtual ones, you can have more translation services. You can have it recorded, then you can have someone translate. So I just think about hybrid moving forward. Don't lose the technology just because we go back to normal things.
And you make some really good points, Ellen. So thank you for adding that. And there's one thing I wanted to ask you, as you also have a diverse population at your school. Do you see that language barrier is one of those challenges that causes parents to be disengaged?
Yes, absolutely. Our ELL population is continuing to grow just based on where we are. And we need to do better on how we reach those parents. And so we're looking to have more nights that are specific for them to have a translator on hand. So if you do one engagement night, we're looking to have it duplicated, but with someone that can translate for those parents so that they're aware, and just being more mindful of their needs. When we communicate, we try really, really hard to make sure that they're involved or engaged as well. So yeah, absolutely. I think that community as a whole, not just the students, but the parents as well, are definitely underserved, unfortunately.
And anyone can chime in at any point for this question. So what are some strategies that we're using to make sure that we engage all parents, make sure that there is equity across the board and all parents receive the resources and all parents are engaged? Because as we all talked about earlier, that it takes a community, and our families are one of the most important facets of that community as we think about partnership. So what are some strategies you could share with our listeners that will help to make parents more engaged and just the whole community to come together?
Jump right in. I don't think there's anything wrong with over communicating. So at my school, we have monthly town halls where it's kind of like a platform. We go over updates, especially with COVID, we go over new updates for that. And parents have a chance to ask questions where we have 200 to 300 families show up, which is really awesome for us. We then have a weekly newsletter, we have a monthly newsletter, and then we have a virtual place for announcements where we post scholarship information, community events that are happening. So we are constantly sharing information. I know PGCPS uses School Messenger. We have at least one robocall go out. I would say every 2 nights we have a robocall going out. So if you don't hear from us, like, that's not an option. You hear from our school. We are engaging you as much as we can. And our families really love getting all that information because they never have any questions. Well, they always have questions, but they always have a sense of what's going on at the school, which we really pride ourselves on. And
you all also mentioned earlier that some of the community school funds can also be used to engage parents in the space as well. Emily, you want to touch on that?
Yes, I just put a link in the chat because the first thing that does come to people's mind when they hear community schools or wraparound services, right? And there are 6 pillars that actually help, ground that strategy, that support, community support, which people refer to as wraparound services, come to the forefront. So in thinking about going back to that needs asset assessment, those needed things, those identified things that not only are things that aren't working well, but also identifying those things that are working really well, and looking at how they're working well can help just really form that steering committee that's in each school, led by that community school coordinator. That's the strategy. It comes from them. And to Dr. Daniel's point, right? When we do say use those acronyms with parents, PTO, PTA, and they're like, I just want to just say hi. Like, I can just do the agenda book, right? We want to, by doing that needs asset assessment, you can actually find the strengths that are within your community. And this is where community schools is really not about titles. It's really about passion. Your custodial staff or your cafeteria staff members, or that neighbor across the street that has a dog, may not even have children, but has that fingerprinting background check, right? And they may have some strength and passion in which they serve. For instance, one of the community schools I helped bring to fruition, the nurse, everyone asked her for glasses. And she's like, yeah, I can find glasses. But she had a real passion for feeding people and became that food pantry liaison and organized it in such a way that just giving it to the parent liaison, because that seems like or sounds like her role, made quite sense. So it really does come from that needs asset assessment and getting those strengths and letting the right people that have that passion and desire really drive those different mechanisms throughout the school.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So we're actually coming close to the end of our time. If there are any other questions that any of our listeners have, please put it in the chat because we're coming close to the end of our time. And we're about to also just wrap up our session. So before we wrap up our session, I would like to add that pretty much all of you guys that are on here today, you know, Dr. Ryan, Janice, Ellen, and you, Ms. Pope, you guys have added such great knowledge to this community because, as you say, community school is a new concept for most people, and they are not aware of what how it came about, how it's structured, and how it's powered, how it's funded. So hopefully tonight our participants get an opportunity to learn a little bit about that. And as you said, Amity, at the end, is that it takes everyone and it takes people going outside of themselves. And just know that community schools is also community work, which means that it takes teachers and everyone involved outside of the classroom to go a little bit above and beyond to make this happen. It doesn't happen in the classroom. That's why it's called community. Most of it happens in the community because for students are not well in their community and at home and their families are not well, we can't expect them to show up for us every day. So if we want them to show up for us every day and produce the successful outcomes that we expect from them, we're going to make sure that we come out of the classroom, go above and beyond, and find out what their needs are in the community and address them in the community and not in the classroom only. And with that said, the LifeChanger of the Year, which sponsors this talk, if you go to the LifeChangeroftheYear.com, they're actually choosing Life Changers of the Year. I was actually the grand prize winner for 2018, 2019. And I won big bucks for myself and my school. So for those of you who are listening in, please go tonight at the LifeChangeroftheYear.com. You can actually, someone can actually nominate you, or you can nominate yourself. And just talk about the great work you've been doing inside and outside of the classroom to make sure that there is equity, to make sure that parents feel welcome, to make sure that students are producing great outcome, and share your great outcome. It's a platform to highlight your story as well. And as such, because I am one of those people who go above and beyond for my student, I have also been chosen as a top 10 teacher for the Global Teacher Prize. That is sponsored by the Varkey Foundation. So yes, I'm PGCPS proud. Because in PGCPS, we have great teachers who go above and beyond for their students. And this is what a community school is. For those of you who are out there, teachers, just remember, you have to go above and beyond. That's what being a community school is. We do not only serve students in the classroom, we serve students at home and in their community. So with that said, I want to thank our distinguished panel. Thank you for your information and thank you for your thoughts and perspective. And we hope that next month you will join us on the 17th of November for our next session. So please go to LifeChangeroftheYear.com to either nominate yourself or nominate some teacher who is doing great work in the community and in the classroom, and also to register for our next sessions that are coming up. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your input. Have a great night.